what would be your strategy for Korean churches to invest into female leaders?
Yeah. I mean, number one, there's more females than males in the world, in the population. And so for you to not invest into more than half the population of the world, like to me, that just makes no sense.
Catherine, you know what's funny? I still call you Catherine Hwang. That's what I know you by. Catherine Hwang.
That's what.
Sorry, Steve.
It's okay. My
Steve
email.
is listening.
My email is still Catherine Hwang everywhere.
It's still Catherine Hwang.
It is. It's so funny because at churches, my name is Yu Jung Hwang.
Mm-hmm.
So I haven't changed anything since we moved to America.
Yeah. Wait, is that your legal name?
It's my legal name.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. And so like, it's, you know, a lot of people know me as Catherine Jin.
Mm-hmm.
So then like all the HR people at my old church be like, who is this Yu Jung Hwang? And I'm like, you guys, the Asian one. It would have been funny. Yeah, it was funny. So then they had to add Catherine Hwang-Jin to like everything.
Yes.
To help.
No one knows, but you and I, we go back in the day.
Yes.
I've known you since you were in high school.
Yes.
I was a youth leader when you were in youth group.
Yeah.
Remember those days? Are you still dancing to Nitro Praise? Remember Nitro Praise?
Oh my gosh. It was the best. It was the best. And then our cool DJ lights. Yeah, I'm not dancing, but my daughters are dancing.
Yeah, that's good.
They get to go to K-pop dance classes.
You went to Blackpink? You go Blackpink concert?
Oh, all the way.
Everyone, their mamas went there.
Oh my. And they're doing Coachella. I'm so proud.
That's
so
wild.
Proud.
I think that's wild,
It's amazing.
Can you imagine back in the day if like the K-pop group at that time was headlining Coachella?
Me.
That's wild.
That was my dream.
That was your dream. I know. I know. You're Nitro Praise. Do you still talk to any of them? Like Pearl and like Diddy and Chris? Do you talk to any of them?
No, they all got married.
Okay.
Yeah. But no, not many of them from there.
Okay, so from high school days, when we were at the same church together, where did you go from there? Where did you go? I know you went to UCR. So did you move churches when you went to college?
No, I didn't. I drove back an hour every weekend to serve in kids ministry.
Dang.
It was insane.
Okay.
Yeah. So I went back every hour. Also, so that my mom does my laundry. But like, that's the real reason. But yeah, to serve in kids ministry, came back every weekend, every Friday to Sunday. And then when so like he's my goddad, but he was my youth pastor. He basically like spiritually adopted me.
Was it the same guy when I was there?
Yeah.
I remember him. I just forgot his name.
Yeah. Calvin Nam.
I didn't know you were that close with him.
Yes. He basically adopted me. Like his kids are my kids, like they call them aunties. And he really showed me like what it was like to have a home filled with just spiritual priorities. And he showed me like what it means to live a life of ministry. He was bivocational as well as a dentist and a youth pastor.
Mm-hmm.
And he really took me under his wings, especially after my dad died. So like we would go to family vacations. I was their free babysitter. But also I learned like what it was like to have a family. So that was like, not that my family wasn't great. It's just my family was broken and my dad just passed away. And so it was like nice. He has 4 kids. And so it was this really active, fun, young family that I got to be part of.
Yeah.
But when he stopped doing ministry, like he bounced around. We went to Choeungyoe. So he was pastoring Choeungyoe Ian for a little bit. So I followed him and did kids ministry for him there. This is all during college. And then I think when he left that ministry and stopped doing bivocational, that's when I went, you guys, back to Good News Chapel.
Good News GNC. Yeah. That was good old times.
Yeah,
good old times. Remember those days when we were practicing for worship, right? It was like you and Pearl singing. I think Diddy was playing electric guitars, Brother Chris playing drums. The brothers playing bass.
Yes, my awesome brother.
Dude, what's your brother doing now these days?
He works for a company called, oh my gosh, he's going to kill me. I don't know.
Okay.
But it's like under
He's around
Yamaha.
Here?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he tells me he basically like breaks sound. I don't even know what that means.
Okay.
But something with like, he makes tech for,
that sounds awesome.
like musicians.
That's great.
He was excited because one of the things they produce, like our old worship pastor Lincoln Brewster uses it.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like a helix. I don't know. These things that I don't know.
Yeah.
But like he is loving what he does. And it all came. No.
Okay.
But it all came from serving in church. Isn't that crazy?
So you were singing, okay? And a lot of people don't know this. So this is one of those things. I don't know if I should expose this. You tried out for like this MTV singing thing, right? What was that show called?
I don't know. Okay, John.
Okay, but you sang,
involved Mariah Carey.
Yeah, you sing a Mariah Carey song. I was like, oh my gosh, that's Catherine. She's on MTV.
Yeah.
What was that experience like? What was it like?
I would say it was, absolutely amazing. I think, everybody knows I tried to be a K-pop star, a musical star, an actress in Hollywood, had like managers and all that stuff. I got to be part of YG for a little bit, CJ Media a little bit. It was like an incredible experience for very many years of my life, but also one that was always hard and difficult because like I have this side of me that wants to do great things for God. And then there's this side of me that loves performing and being a singer. And so tying that to, I feel like now more it's accepted, but at that time it was really hard. It's like either you're a Christian singer or go to HE double hockey sticks and try pursuing K-pop. So like it was really difficult at that time. Yeah.
So did you ever go to Korea when you're doing YG? How long were you there for? Okay.
2 times. I think the longest was about 2 months. Yeah.
Wow.
Living in the dorms and all that stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Jinushan was like one of my favorite groups.
And Sean was the one who asked me.
That's awesome. I remember that story actually. Yeah, I remember that. Do you still keep in touch with them?
No, I wish.
Okay. But that's cool.
I do follow him.
That one, I forgot what show it was. Remember they did that Back to the 90s music special?
Oh, it was so cool.
And then Jinushan came back out with a single. I'm still rocking that single on my Spotify. Yeah. Dude, they were my AIM name is Jinushan, okay? My friends still call me that.
I remember that.
Jinushan. They were like one of my favorites, man.
I remember that.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so you did the YG thing, trying to pursue that thing. Was this during college?
It was during college.
Okay. During college, you're a pastor, Lev Chong Gyoe, and then you went to GNC, right? I forgot because Ruben reminded me of this. Did we cross paths there? Because I feel like I came, but you got married and then that's when you left. It was very soon after I came.
I think the kids pastor at that time was Brian. Brian, I think USC Brian. Like,
I don't even remember it. It was Jay before me. Jay's song.
Was it Jay? No. I thought it was, maybe it was Jay.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
Yes, it's Jay. Just kidding. He moved to NorCal.
Yeah, he's in NorCal.
It's Jay. Yes.
So Jay was there before me and then I came in.
Yes.
And then you were with me for just a little bit and then you got married and you left. Yeah. So I was in elementary there as the pastor there. That's how I know Ruben and his kids. They were my elementary kids. Is that when, I think Steve, your husband, was a pastor at the Vine?
He was.
So you went to the Vine?
Yes, after I got married. Yeah.
And how long were you there for at the Vine?
I was there, 7 years. Okay. Steve was there 20.
Okay. Yeah. But you weren't on staff.
I was.
You were? Okay. What were you doing there?
I was the kids director.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were the kids director there for 7 years and you were going to Talbot at this time?
I was going to Talbot at that time.
Okay. So you're at this church called the Vine. Yeah. Marcus was the pastor at the time. Steve's there.
Yes.
Growing up, we all knew what the Vine was. Yeah. By the way, I don't want to forget this. I know this is such a tangent, but I remember at your wedding when the guy says you may kiss the bride and Steve dipped you and kissed you. And Hannah, we weren't married yet, but I was like, I'm going to do that when we're married. She's like, no, you're not. But I remember when he did that, I was like, that was the best, Steve. He dipped you and kissed you. Oh my gosh.
That was the best. Kill you. She would, yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay, such a tangent. Okay. I just had to get that out there because that was such a funny moment.
Did you know I love kids so much that I had a whole kids program at that wedding? Did you know?
They sang a song during the thing? No.
No, but I had, I think about 50 to 75 kids.
Yeah, I do remember that now. I hated
going to weddings and they wouldn't invite the kids. Yeah. Now I understand as a parent.
Right.
But I personally at that time was like, no, bring all the kids. I will watch them for you. Mm-hmm. So I like paid my friend who was a kids director at that time to do like a full-on kids program and have their own food at my wedding.
That's the best.
And Steve thought I was insane. He's like, what am I paying? I was like, sorry, this is what you get marrying me. This will be the trajectory of your life. So start it now.
Okay. So sorry, huge tangent. You're doing kids ministry at the Vine.
Yeah.
How did you go from there to this huge kind of multi-ethnic white mega church at Bayside?
Yeah.
How did that happen? It
was crazy and it was Jesus and it was a lot of like eye-opening experiences. I mean, our church knows now. So when Steve and I left the Vine, like, or in that transition period, my husband, like the most amazing man ever, probably like builder up of confidence, like true leader of leaders. Like he just believes in people. And like the person he believed in most was his wife in doing ministry. So like as the associate pastor at the Vine, like he saw things in kids ministry, I guess he's never seen. Also, I think it's biased, but at the same time, he like couldn't believe how much like I was passionate about it. And so even things that I would learn at Talbot, like I would figure out how to implement it right away. Like it wasn't just content in my head. It was genuinely, how do I build this up? How do I create a practice? How do I create a culture value? All that system. And I would try different things. And I think that's why, like in some sense, when you're creative, you try to figure out different ways, not just how people tell you how it should be done. And so, and while I was also like working for the Vine, I also was running my family's marketing business.
Oh,
full-time.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, because they couldn't pay me very much.
Right.
So I had a full-time job doing business, and so business development. And so you have my one life doing all these like proposals, $1 million marketing and business development and things that I'm learning at my work. And then I have church. And so God so blessed it in that way. He trained me genuinely in those 7 years how to tie the two together, because my life had to be that. So like, I'm working 40 hours, business full on, and then traveling the world and getting to meet all this amazing people, and then church on the weekend. I would bring that back. And so any cool ideas I would have for new business development, I would bring it to church. So he saw something just very unique in kids ministry. So to tell you what happened is when we were praying and figuring out, okay, it's time to transition out of the Vine, instead of him looking for pastoral roles, he felt like I needed to do that.
Wow.
I didn't even know how to do it. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like they teach you how to get a job.
Right.
A lot of times seminary students are there because they know that's what they want to do.
Right.
And I never thought this was going to be a job of mine. Like, once again, I married my husband because he was the pastor. Mm-hmm. I was going to be like his sugar mama, like, like support him on the side is what I genuinely, like, that's what I thought. Uh-huh. And so there's these things called recruiters. So if students don't know, there are ministry recruiters out there, multiple companies that are out there that have so many job openings all around, not only America, specifically America, but all around the world. Like
Slingshot.
Yeah.
Like that,
yeah. So that's the company that I actually got connected with. Mm-hmm. I love Vance from Slingshot. He was my coach for a very long time, and he really helped propel me to where I'm at. So I applied for a job. One of those jobs was Mariners. It's so funny.
At that time? Oh, what did you apply for?
The executive assistant job.
Okay.
Of kids ministry.
All right.
I did not get it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. I also applied for Shepherd of the Hills.
Yeah. Up at the Valley, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So like, a lot of times my experience, my resume did not fit these giant churches. Mm-hmm. And so the benefit of this recruiter was he really guided me and say, hey, you're not quite there yet. Why don't you do like a next steps church? So we went from I was serving at a kids of about 75 kids at that time in Steve's church. And then he said, you need about 200 to 500 kids experience in order to get to these bigger churches. And I was like, okay, I absolutely agree. He helped find a role in a city called Vacaville.
Oh, I don't even know where that is.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, I remember coming from the city and moving there, and there's literally a cow, and I've never seen a cow pee before. And I saw a cow like literally, I'm like your typical city, like, anyways.
This is in NorCal?
So this is in NorCal, like in middle of Sacramento and San Francisco, like near UC Davis.
Okay.
There's a city called Vacaville. And people don't know a lot of California is actually rural. So people only know LA and San Francisco.
Yeah.
Anything outside of that is very rural. Rural, am I saying that correctly?
Yeah.
My fob accent still comes out all the time. Yeah. And so he helped me find a church, learn there 2 years. The crazy thing about Bayside is I went to Bayside to learn. So I will say, how did you get to where it is that you're going? I'm always learning. Whether it was conferences that I would volunteer for so that I don't have to have my church pay. Like if I knew the budget was limited, I would take my own vacation time and use it. So if I ever got 2 weekends off in a year, those 2 weekends I was strategic in visiting churches that I would want to learn from.
Wow.
So, I mean, yeah. So probably in the last 7 years, I would say I've visited about 30 churches on the side for research, not even like my church is paying me. Like this is how passionate I am about learning the best practices. And so I was there 2 years researching at Bayside because they have this incredible drive-through where we have like 25,000 people drive through to watch lights at Christmas. And my church kind of wanted to do like a smaller version. And so when I heard that that was the church doing it, I emailed the children's pastor at that time, met him one time. And then when my husband got a job nearby at William Jessup University and we moved over there, literally, it's like a crazy God thing. From that one meeting, that pastor knew me, the children's pastor at that time, through Facebook, and was like, I remember meeting you and it's awesome that you're moving here. Do you want a job? Like, that's exactly how it happened.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I went from K3 director in a year, became the children's pastor, and got to
for the whole church.
For that campus.
For that campus. Yeah. Okay.
And it was probably, I had the best 5 years of my life there.
How big was that campus?
So that campus before COVID was 3,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dang.
So the kids ministry was like about 500 at that time. And then post COVID, it was around 3, but it was incredible. Like they allowed me to do whatever it is I wanted. It was a growing church. And so we got to do some incredible things. Like I still to this day, like love that team and so grateful for them believing in me. Cause I at that time, our children's ministry, like at New Life in Vacaville had 200 kids. And so 200 kids to then like 300 to 500. And then now here at Mariners.
Was New Life like a white church? Or
It was.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was very...
Did you feel nervous at all going from like more of we all grew up in more Korean church settings. Did you feel nervous at all? Like going from Vine, which was predominantly Korean Americans.
Yes, it was.
Going to like more of a white church?
If I look at my history, I think I wasn't worried, because I specifically said yes to churches that wanted diversity. So to me, I remember in seminary class, they would say Sunday is the most segregated day of the week. And like that just struck chord with me. I understand that we have to, and we get to like worship and have expressions in the way that we're comfortable in. But at the same time, like I just saw so much beauty in different people, different age groups. Like that's why I do kids ministry, because I believe like different things bring light to the entire body of Christ, especially kids. Like kids are a huge factor and so meaningful to the entire expression of the church. And so in that sense, I was excited. Yeah. Was I nervous? Absolutely. But also not self-aware to know that I had so many things that kind of would be a friction part that I wasn't aware of at that time. I was so young. And so, yeah, I wasn't nervous going in.
Well, I think your gifting and also your personality based upon your history, you did all that YG stuff. You just have this gift of like going out there, risking it. You're kind of like an entrepreneur. So you had this gift of just going for it, which I think is great. Is Steve like that too? Is he like kind of like just go for it? Let's see what happens.
I don't know if he's go for it, but he is a way bigger risk taker than I am. So like, you know, I always say I naively go into things. He actually goes into it with an intention. So in that sense, like he is, I think that's the first thing I remember on our date. Our first date, I like,
where was it?
It was at, it starts with an S in Pasadena. It's like no longer there.
Okay, some restaurant
in downtown, Old Town, Pasadena, which I love. Old Town, so nice. And Il Sorrento, some Italian restaurant. And I remember like I asked him like, what do you want to do in life? And he's like, I want to do great things for God. And then he asked me the same question. And I was like, I want to change the world for Jesus. And then we both were like, okay. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So we're both crazy. That's what it was.
That's good. You got 3 kids now,
we do.
Right? How did you have 2 kids, all 3 up in NorCal?
No.
Okay, so you had kids before you went.
We did. We had Evelyn at that time. She was just going into kindergarten. Oh my gosh.
That's your oldest?
Yeah. And then Charlotte was 2. So Steve stayed home for a whole year in Vacaville and was the stay-home dad. Like,
how was that for him?
It was hard.
Yeah.
So like
going from like pastoral ministry to not be stay-home dad. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think like one of the amazing things about the Korean American churches and Asian churches is like we really respect pastors. We really put them in like a high calling, which, you know, the Bible says so. And so like he came from that to him having this calling to stay home with our children, potty training, literally cleaning up poop every single day. It really did have, like, he had really incredible moments with God, but he did say like that season was what like they call the dark night of the soul, where he had to really like struggle with his identity as a child of God and then a man of God. And then his willpower to be an incredible father and husband. It like really stemmed from that first year transitioning. Yeah.
And then after a year, that's when he got the job at William Jessup University. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you something that might be a little sensitive. So tell me if you don't feel comfortable talking about it. But, you know, in our culture, but not just even in our culture, maybe it is more of our culture. Being a female pastor isn't that common, right?
No.
I'm a complementarian still, but you know, Saddleback just recently flipped to egalitarian. So I'm kind of thinking about these things now, you know? How was that for you going into a pastoral position as a female? What was that like? What was the hurdles? How did you get through it?
Yeah. And especially in an Asian church, like you do not see women pastors at all.
Right.
And to this day, many times I am still the only female pastor in many rooms. It's getting easier a little bit, but most of my pastoral ministry life, like I was the only female pastor and I was the only
like in the staff meeting
minority female pastor.
Mm-hmm.
And so it still weighs a lot of like insecurities in me that comes out. I grew up most of my life as complementarian and totally being accepting of that. It wasn't until I think my husband really believed in me that I even believed in myself. And I think that's the beautiful thing about Jesus is like so many people don't believe they can do things until like the God of the creator of the world comes down to your level as a baby and as a human being and then saves you from what you think you can accomplish and do. And so like my husband really was like an incredible reflection of that for me. And so, yeah, if my husband didn't believe in me, I wouldn't be here. But for me personally, it was hard because finding my voice, I still struggle with it today. Like if I'm in a room full of men or sometimes now female women, I have a very hard time actually stating what I'm thinking. I question my decisions constantly. And that's kind of my hurdle that I have to overcome in this new position is like, I have to be confident in the experiences that I have in the calling that God's given me. But it really is difficult and it weighs on my soul a lot.
It's kind of a double hurdle for you though, because not only are you female, but like we're both Korean.
Yeah.
Some things I always say to my friends is like, I hate how Korean I am because till this day, I'm very much like that too. Like, am I allowed to say something right now? Yeah. Like when I'm talking to Pastor Ben, sometimes I'm just like, am I allowed to share my real thought right now in front of him? I always second guess myself. Like I'm supposed to just be quiet, right? That's how we all grew up, you know? So like for you, it's not only a cultural thing, but it's also a female thing.
It is.
When you were at Talbot, who were the people that you were talking to? Like what mentors did you have to like, you're thinking about being a pastor and again, there's not a lot of people to talk to. So who are you talking to?
Oh my gosh. I will say Talbot was the best experience of my life. I cannot believe that God gifted that for me. I like overstayed my stay. I was getting the teaching credential, like whatever I can get to stay there in a long time. The people for sure at that time was Dr. Russell. Well, Russell was my incredible supporter. Jonathan Kim was another supporter. every single professor, Dr. Carr, everyone that was in even the Christian ed realm, I know that doesn't exist right now, but every single professor there was like, you have a calling. You need to do this. At that time in seminary was like, you need to start writing curriculum. Like they were so encouraging. I didn't believe in myself, but they did, and like little sparks. And so even now that I'm writing curriculum for like incredible companies like Davis C. Cook and people that I literally would like learn from and go to breakouts
when we were kids,
from.
that's what we did. Davis C. Cook. Every Korean church had that. The workbook, we all had that.
Oh my gosh. I cannot, like, I look at my life and I can't believe what God did. But professors like at least put like a little, hey, you should consider these things. You should consider these things. But yes, I'm like truly Korean American. Like I moved here when I was 9. So like now not only learning English, right? Like I have that insecurity that like I have to read the room in every room that I'm in. And then being a female, like you don't have a you're supposed to just always be the support. It's been interesting. Yeah.
So going from, again, more Korean American church to more of a white church, now you're at Mariners. What were some of the main differences, not only you observed, but you felt?
Yeah.
Because even for me, coming from Korean church planting, and then now having a Saddleback, there's a lot of those that I not only see, but I feel it. I feel those differences. Yeah. What are they for you? I think for me is I understand why the Korean American church or all these churches hang out with people who look like you, think like you, eat like you, hang out with you. Like it's just easier. So relationally, like as outgoing I am like your extreme extrovert. Like I will talk to a tree to like get a conversation. Do you know what I mean? Like I feel like you know me. I feel like we're from the same court. Like we will go and talk to all the strangers out there because we genuinely love people and we're so extroverted. But man, it is hard to get deep relationships. It really is when people think different than you, have different philosophies of ministries and values, and eat different things and question what you eat, and stuff like it's getting so much easier now that Korean food is like a huge hit. Yeah, and the Mariners is in Irvine, right?
Yeah,
you're kind of in a very strong Asian community there.
Yes, for sure. But in the beginning, when we went to Vacaville, and I'm so grateful that pastor was wanting a diverse church, wanting multicultural in there. So in that sense, like he really encouraged me. And I would say the greatest benefit is that I purposely said yes to churches that wanted that, which helps me not feel as alone as I did internally. Yeah. So like, at least if you know in your head that that's what they want, like you don't feel so outcasted. I think if I was at a church that didn't want those things, it would be 100 times more difficult and very uncomfortable to just like do your job.
When you say like the deep relationships, that's what I think about too a lot. Yeah. Something that Hannah and I miss from like the Korean church community is that deep fellowship.
Yep.
Like when church was over, it wasn't really over. Nope. Like we wanted to eat, go to people's houses. Yeah, just like chilling in people's living rooms, but it's very different in a non-Asian church. We miss that a lot. Mm-hmm. Do you miss anything from like Korean church settings?
Absolutely. And I think another part that I miss is in the Korean culture, because we're such a communal culture, like when someone's hurting, like the whole church kind of absorbs and goes and does stuff. So like, if you think about it, my goddad, who's a pastor, adopted me when my dad died, like spiritually, not like legally, but him doing that, he literally took out hours of his life to do that. I remember college pastors at that time who like would hang out with me and do homework with me for 6 hours after. Like no one's counting hours. No, like this is just part of who you are. Community is part of the church. So yeah, I really do miss that a lot. It's not this like come in and go. Like I remember in my mom too, she would tell me like this church, like the physical building, in that sense, like it's good and bad. Like this is a house of God. And so you must clean the bathroom. And I remember like as a 12-year-old, like wiping the women's bathroom because that's how much we valued our church.
Right.
Like I ain't staff. That's not my job to clean the church. But like I remember like you take care of the church, and everyone in that community kind of had that mindset. So you didn't feel as alone in doing that.
There's some cool things happening because like when we were growing up, we didn't have a lot of Asians in these certain roles that you or a Julius Kim, who's the president of Gospel Coalition, or
you,
or Joe. No, I'm a nobody. No way, man. I'm a nobody. But you're writing curriculum. You're like speaking at conferences. Not only you're Asian, you're a female Asian. So now there's all these female Asians now that have like an image, a person that they could look up to. How did you get involved with that? Because I think that's awesome to write curriculum for Davy C. Cook. That's wild. How did you get into that?
It's insane. Like, I wish I can say, oh, I'm so awesome and it happened. The prideful part of me, like I tried it and it happened. That's how you know God is so real, because like it is truly by his grace I'm still in this game. Like if it was on my merits alone, I should have been finished like 10 years ago. It really was anytime I was trying to seek for more help. So like I was telling you, I'm a natural learner. So I'm always trying to figure things out. And it is when I would ask, like I would go and I got coaching at a thing called Children's Pastor Conference by the International Children's Ministry. It's like a really incredible resource if anyone needs it. It's called INCM. I was stuck at my work and I couldn't really figure out how to move forward in my leadership. And so I, on my own dime, paid for a coaching thing that lasted about 9 months. And so every 2 weeks, I would gather with these children's pastors. And through that, I built relationships. And one person, my coach at that time is like, you need to meet this person. And then that's how they invited me to writing. Because like, it really is, you know, we always say church is done in relationship. Like life really is done in relationships and who you know. So yeah, I wish I can say I applied and they were like, your writing's so amazing. Or even for the conferences, I wish it was like, you speak so well, because it's not true. I am like this is how I talk in public speaking. I don't think it takes me a long time to get used to public speaking. Also, because I wasn't given a lot of opportunities to speak publicly.
Right.
And so that arm of my leadership really isn't honed, but it's really through, hey, I was attending this conference because I wanted to learn about that specific topic, met the leaders there, and they were like, huh, wow, like she's pretty cool and unique. And then I think they would ask other people about me. And then that's how I got invited. And so I would say, you know, any leaders out there, what you do now impacts the relationships and your like reputation, because how you live your life is what people are going to see. And I really would not be having the job that I have or opportunities that I have if I didn't keep everything I can in my possible to number one, like really try my best to be at my best at my job, do my job well. And then, yeah, like try to have good relationships. And man, that is probably the harder part, is like honoring everyone around you. But that's the part I feel like Asian culture really propelled me well for. They said, honor those around you. And as sometimes painful it was that I wasn't allowed to be on stage or all those things, it helped me to see everyone honorably. And so whether you were my small group leader or volunteer or like a pastor or facilities or tech team, like I honored and I tried to honor every single person. And that's what, I don't know, the Korean church really propelled me well for. You're like speaking at all these conferences. By the way, I got to get your autograph after this, okay? Speaking at conferences, you're writing curriculum, but you grew up in a very different way in the church. You had this unique experience that we both do now because we know we're at like large mega churches. When you think about like the Korean churches that you grew up in, what were some of those challenges growing up in the Korean church setting? What were some of those obstacles? Yeah. Even horror stories. Don't name names. No. But what were some of those kind of obstacles and challenges in the Korean church? Yeah, I remember when I just moved to America, and my mom was going to church, you know, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. There was no program for me. And so I was so lonely. I was talking to a pomegranate. I remember that specifically. There was a pomegranate tree at a church. And like me and my brother, you know, and couple of kids, no program, no oversight, no
You're just waiting for your parents, right?
You're just waiting.
Yeah.
And so you can get into any trouble thank God we were safe, right? By the grace of God at that time too, it was like but there was no adult relationships. The parents are all hanging out. Even if it's cooking, at least they're getting to have fun and get community. I didn't get any of that, I remember. And I was like, man, that was at least 40 hours of missed opportunities.
Right.
Yeah. I'm grateful that I got to know that the physical church building was a safe place. But not having a program for kids when there are things for adults, I think is a huge missed opportunity that I felt at that time as a child. That's one of those personal experiences for me that propels me to try to create like midweek curriculum, midweek things for kids, because I want to make sure if parents are having a class, like we have a class for kids.
What about like when you were in like high school and college, did you ever feel like, like the typical stories, like the CAM wants to do something like this, or they said no to something like this. And as Korean Americans, we would always feel so upset about those things. Did you ever have moments like that?
I think in that sense, so like one of the parts of being a female leader now is like, now I understand the pressure and the weight of that. Like anytime you're in a leadership position, like everyone's like, oh, I want to be a leader and you get to have influence. I don't think everyone ever understands the cost of the weight of that burden of leadership. And so in some sense, I didn't know that issue because I was never placed in those positions. So nobody is telling me I can't use a room because I wasn't in the table or in the room that was making the decisions to use the room or not, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And so in that sense, like I can't identify with some of my male Korean American pastor friends because they got to be in the room to decide whether or not this is a conflict or a friction part. All I saw was like, senior pastor is happy on Sunday and my youth pastor is unhappy on Sunday, or youth pastor is happy on Sunday and my senior pastor is unhappy on Sunday. Like that's all I would read. And I would try to figure out and be that clown in the middle, like, we still love you both. But I never had to burden myself with that or feel it. So in that sense, like I'm grateful for that. But at the same time, I wish I had the opportunity to be trained in that. If I can speak for, whether you believe in female having a pastoral role or not, allowing them to even be exposed. That's why we always say like education is so key. Being in the room to even observe conflict, sometimes you learn how the body of Christ resolves conflict. So if you're not in the room to even like observe the conflict, that means you got a chance to not learn how to resolve it. So, people invite leaders that you want to invest into. Either way, anyone that gets better in leadership and conflict management is going to be great for the world, in my opinion.
What would you say, again, your experience is very unique. What would you say to Korean churches right now? How would you instruct them or guide them to invest into female leaders? Because typically what we see is if there's a female that wants to be in staff, it's like women's ministry or children's.
Yep.
That's it.
That's your options.
That's it. That's all you get. You're just called a director, right? Yep. Which I think is really confusing, by the way. But other than that, what if it's not pastoral, right? I'm totally a believer in staff. It doesn't have to be pastoral. There's so many things that you can do. But in the Korean church, what would you lay out for them? What would be the strategy to invest into female leadership? Because I believe that needs to happen more.
Yes.
I'm a huge supporter of that. Yes. I think, again, I go back to those examples, actually. I'm like, all we ever do is children's ministry. I'm like, dude, there's a lot of females that could do a lot of great things. There's no platform or there's no pipeline for them. No. We have to invest in them. So what would be your strategy for Korean churches to invest into female leaders? Yeah.
Number one, there's more females than males in the world, in the population. And so for you to not invest into more than half the population of the world, like to me, that just makes no sense, right? As far as a pipeline is you do, number one, as a leader, have to be confident in your like identity with God and then your marriages. So I would say like before you even have a pipeline or a strategy or a dream, like you as a leader, as a Korean, and we had we do have so many amazing Korean American pastors that have amazing marriages. Because I think the whole like being married and unmarried is many reasons why women aren't allowed into ministry too, which stems out of fear, right? So I would say like if those two things are out of line, number one, you already understand it. Number two, you have an incredible, not perfect, but like a stable marriage and identity in God at that time. Number three, third strategy is you have to find someone with experience and invite them into conversations, invite them into coaching, invite them into the resources. I think one of the greatest things that the American church does do well that differ from when I worked at an Asian church, and it could be resources, but I know plenty of Korean churches that are way bigger than American churches that I work for. Even at a church of 1,000, they hired a coach for me. I talked to you about Slingshot, and they were that coach for me for 6 months. Having a coach, someone who's gone before you, really does help. And so what is that pipeline? Number one is find somebody, even if that female person hasn't led that specific thing, there's someone in your congregation as a female who has led with this like real estate agent or, you know what I mean? Like business owners, CEOs, or a principal, holy moly, like a principal of a school. There are plenty of females leader out there. Bring them to that table when you're making discussions, or at least ask them to coach your potential leaders to help them in these things like public speaking, conflict management, relational issues, and then the theological part that of course you get done through amazing seminaries.
Hey, real quick, thank you so much for watching. If you're finding value in this content, can you please support the channel by hitting the like button, subscribing, selecting all on the notification bell, or write a comment down below. All four of these things helps our channel get pushed out more on YouTube homepages so that more people can find this value. Okay, let's get back to the podcast. Here at this school, we have this big vision. We're trying to bring the Korean-speaking first-gen pastor, and then not just EM, but any Korean American English-speaking pastor to the same school, so that while they're getting trained academically, we're going to try to help build that healthier bridge, because we're still hearing problems between KM and EM, right? A lot of us, that's why we don't want to go back to Korean church, because we don't want to experience that again. Or something really good that's happening is kind of like where we came from, right? We see a lot of Korean American churches without KM. So there's options out there too. When you hear that vision, trying to build this healthier relationship between first gen, second gen, Korean speaking, English speaking, what are some things that you think like, okay, these are some things that need to happen to build that healthier relationship?
Oh man, I would just say like right now in this season is a lot of self-awareness, almost like therapy. I think what we do well, whether you're Korean American or speaking English or Korean, I think we're really good at head knowledge. And then I know there was like a phase of us getting like better at spiritually healthy. I think there's a tie in that too. So as you talk about bridge between Korean American pastors speaking Korean and then English Korean American pastors being English, like not only is there like a bridge or a separation in language, culture, but I think just like emotions, there's this huge thing about emotions that almost like Asians are afraid to address, at least for me. And I'm like the most emotional person out there, but I am so afraid of my emotions. So I think that could be something unique if you guys were able to talk about that and give language and help propel them for the so many decisions you have to make in ministry. And every single one involves your emotion and that other person's emotion. So yeah, I always say in bridging between things has to be like content, like the language. And I think that part you guys have it, theology, all that you guys have it. I think one thing that I would love to help even with young kids these days is like, how do you identify your emotions?
Yeah, I think that's huge, because again, our culture is very much an honor shame culture, so that when you feel an emotion, you suppress it.
Oh, so much suppression.
Don't express, right? Yeah. Or itamuro, it's like just be quiet. Like don't express your anger or frustration. And then unfortunately, we're seeing that all come out now in bad ways because we never dealt with it.
Yeah.
But you also said something before too, fear.
Yeah.
Fear is a big one with us. Like that's another thing that I always tell my friends, like, I hate how Korean I am sometimes because I have so much fear because we were raised to play it safe our whole life.
Yep.
Don't take risk. Focus on school. Keep your head down.
Yep.
Even if you get bullied, don't say anything. And we have this fear in us that we need to deal with.
Yeah.
Do you think that with specifically, maybe this is more about your friends, not at Mariners Church, but your fellow Korean parents, your friends who are parents.
Yeah.
Do you think this emotional thing that you just brought up is influencing the way we parent our kids?
1,000,000%. So we always tell, just statistically, when there's a trauma, it affects 3 generations.
Wow.
So, I always tell, like, even our leaders, when a kid comes with trauma, that's 3 generations that you have to almost cater to, parent that child and that future child of your child that you're ministering to. So when I say kids ministry is crucial, like, I really mean it, because it really does affect the next generation. And so I think for us in Korea, a war generation, our parents was children of war, right? That I don't even know how to deal with that mentally, like the amount of fear that you would have from that.
Right.
We are probably the only country that has gone from third world country to first world country in 1 generation. I am so proud as a Korean. Like, I can say that now, but I am so proud. We are the only generation who's done that as a community. So there's something absolutely beautiful in that. But yeah, war generation, success stemming from fear. So now we're at this 3rd generation, and I'm praying that it's healing. Like, yes, we're successful, but that success isn't everything, right? It's not going to make your fear go away. And so we're at this, our children are now the 3rd generation of whatever that trauma was. And so I pray, and yes, it does affect our parenting, but I hope we have way more tools than our past generations ever had. So I'm excited because, like, we're at that 3rd generation where our kids will hopefully have the fruit of a lot of the spiritual prayers and the traumas and the pain points that our generations above us had to go through.
Guys, I was like, that was mind blowing a little bit. Yeah. To talk about that trauma for 3 generations.
Yeah.
And then, the war generation, dude, I forget about that a lot. That's where our parents came from. Their parents experienced that war.
Oh my goodness.
That's unbelievable. A lot of us have been talking about that in the podcast, how like our 2nd gen us, we didn't experience the suffering that our parents went through. So it made us less resilient, which is now affecting the way we parent our kids.
Yeah.
Like, you remember, like, I was an elementary pastor, so I have a huge heart for kids, huge heart for elementary. In fact, my story is that there was a possibility that I would still be an elementary pastor at GSC till this day, because I wanted to stay there, but for different reasons, they couldn't hire me, stuff like that. So I love elementary ministry. I love children and speaking to children, all that stuff, all that VBS curriculum. It's all good. When you're seeing the generation today, I get really worried, super worried. But that's my personality too. I get worried a lot. But I get really worried about what I'm seeing with the way we're parenting children today. Yeah. One of the things that I'm super worried about is that Sundays has become just optional.
Yep.
It's an extracurricular activity. It's just right there on the same list with basketball and baseball, all that stuff. And then parents just, we never grew up like that.
Nope.
We went to Sunday. Yeah.
And Wednesday and Thursday.
Like you went, like, what? You're not going to miss Sunday service, you know? Yeah. So I think for us, especially in Koreans, there's this reaction happening where we're kind of thinking like, it's not that bad to miss.
Yeah.
But the pendulum has swung so far, and now it's like, wait a second.
Yeah.
Once in a while is one thing, but like weeks at a time and just like not showing up, it's affecting the way kids are growing up and their faith. Do you see that? And if you do see that, what are your thoughts on children growing up with that style of church?
1,000,000% I see it. They said 30% once COVID happened, left. So most churches are back, not fully, but they like if you're back about 60 to 65%, like you're normal. because the 30% of the church just basically like whoever was on your fringes and nuns, like they're just not even coming, right? And then those that are still staying it used to be average once a month. It's now once 6 months. So if you come to church once every 5-6 weeks, you're considered a member of the church.
Oh my gosh.
That's how infrequent people are coming now. And so like statistically, that's, just mind-boggling for us who've gone every weekend. And for pastors who are creating things that, especially in kids ministry, we stack and we do scope and sequence based on what you learned the week before, because we're teachers at heart. And so if you weren't here last weekend, like it's basically brand new content every 6 weeks you come. And then it becomes just childcare when we're just taking care of the kids and not genuinely teaching and educating them. So it is a huge problem. It does exist. My one hope or speck of hope is that a lot of churches and leaders like you have created things like podcasts, created online content, created things that I pray we have put this into the parents. You are the primary care, like spiritual discipler of your children, not the pastors. It's you, parents. And so we pray that they are doing that. So even if you didn't come every weekend, you're now teaching your child. And so I think the pendulum swung from, oh my gosh, my pastor has to be the one who teach my children. Thus, I needed to send them. Like we were that baseball coach was like, if you don't go to baseball team, you genuinely don't get to practice, right? I almost feel like, yes, we did this pendulum of like, the parents are the primary disciple makers. And so we like pressure them to do it all. But that we just have seen it's not really working either. It has to be this incredible, beautiful partnership where it's both the leaders of the church as well as the parents. And so that's kind of we're hoping to move the pendulum one point to like when we were growing up, oh, if pastor doesn't teach you, no one else can teach you, to no, parents are the primary discipler. Like, yeah, they are because they have more time. But there is so much value in actually going to church and learning from people who've done this as a job and has gone to school for it.
What do you think it is other than the pandemic? Because again, when we're talking about like our Korean friends, because we all grew up with that. But what's funny is that we're not practicing that right now as a family.
Yeah.
Other than pandemic, do you think there's any other reasons of why we're not instilling that commitment to church to our kids?
I believe in the Korean American parents. We can make some crazy things happen. Like, I mean, Blackpink is like headlining Coachella, okay?
Come
on, people.
We go to Blackpink, that's our example.
I mean, we can do impossible things. Like, God has gifted our Korean American heritage and our, oh my gosh, like our education level, everything. He has given us so many giftings. I feel like at this point, if you're not going to church every weekend, it's really on you now because it is, I don't know, I guess it's available. It's there. Like we have to bring them. It's going to be hard. Kids are going to cry. Kids are going to complain, like this whole thing of, oh, we don't want to do things that our kids don't want to. When did we stop becoming the parent? Like we are the parent.
You're right.
Like, can you imagine saying no to your dad? Like going to church, you'd be dead. Like,
Fear's coming up back again.
But not that we have to do it that way, but there's some healthy balance of like, you guys, this is the priority of our family, God and worshiping him and giving thanks. Like every time the Israelites would slack off and complain, what did they do? Build a memorial, remind them of these consistent things, reminding them like they have to actually say the words of the Bible, the Torah, like these practices, it helps build into that child's rhythm. So if you're not taking your kids every weekend, that's not going to become a value of your child. Like if you do church at home, like then the value is the same as you watching something on TV. Yeah. Right.
Church at home is like not, I mean, it's like,
it's not.
I get it if you're sick, but it should not be a substitute.
It's so different. And then for a kid though, I always try to look into an eye of a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old, even 8-year-old, like you watching like normal show and watching church in terms of entertainment. the not church show is always gonna win.
Right.
And so the value of a Christian community, the body of Christ, is seeing people and thinking outside of yourself and seeing God, right? And so, yeah, I'm sorry, parents, to be mean.
No way. I'm right with you.
But I'm like, just get them to church, you guys.
I'm right with you. I say that all the time. I'm like, are you parenting your kids or your kids parenting you?
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
Like, step up. And these are the values you have to instill. At Mariners, how are you trying to instill that value into the parents at your church?
Oh my goodness. I mean, Eric is such an incredible pastor who really like wants to set and has, and since he's taken over, the value of worship, like service. And so simple things like he even implemented this year is he's now going to close the door to the worship center 15 minutes into service.
Wait, so no one can go in?
No one could go in. If you come late to church, you're now sitting at the lobby.
Outside.
Yeah.
Oh, do you guys still have that outdoor area in the grass?
We have incredible like options. And so we have the chapel, we have the upstairs, we have the lobby, and we have outside. So it's not like he's saying don't come to church.
But you can't go in the worship center.
No, because like, we are going to start genuinely saying, you guys, this is a high value. I think as leaders, if we don't value what we're presenting, then like obviously people who are following are going to question what you're presenting too, right? And so that's something that like I was a little bit shocked by when it was going to happen. And I don't even know if I'm allowed to say publicly. Hopefully don't put this far on the socials. But like in some sense, like that really reminded me of the Bible verse, like Moses having to take off his shoes and sandals because now you're in the presence of God. And not that we believe the physical building is where, you know, but in some sense, like when you come to church, like, are we preparing our hearts and are we genuinely ready to receive God's word and his people and the relationship that God has to ignite us for the rest of the week? Like, are you coming for spiritual rest? Right? And so you ask, whoa, when he did that for the adults, I'm like, we're doing it for kids. Same thing. Now kids services, like before the service doors were open free for all, like people were walking in and out, dropping off like 45 minutes into service. Yeah. Like now we're just like, we kindly still say, yes, absolutely come. But our greeters are now walking them into the locked doors. We do close every door into the kids' experience 15 minutes in when it's large group worship time. And I will say the church has been recipient of that. Of course, there are a few that are like, oh man, but we've seen the church come on time, actually stepping up. And last few weekends, we've had like the biggest weekends in Mariners history. So in that sense, I feel like God is honoring because in our hearts, we just want to like genuinely worship him and show the kids like, this is your time with God. I am not here just to babysit you. I love you dearly, but if you don't see God at this 1 hour that you're here with us, like we have set you up for failure for the rest of the week, right? So yeah, like
that's unbelievable. Yeah. Like I'm still shocked that you guys are doing this because not only are you a large church like us, where typically the style is, hey, just we want anyone off the streets to come. And
we do. We really want them to come.
Right. You still want that. Right. I agree with that. But we're also in Irvine. And for some of the people who don't know, it's a very, like high class, high end city. And I feel like people would have been so upset for Pastor Eric to make that kind of decision.
Yeah. And it's not like we like announced it to the whole world. Like we did phases of like, hey, like, he always has this bell. I don't know if you guys come to our church, the bell rings when worship is about to start, just like school.
I didn't know that.
It's pretty odd. When I first heard it, I was like, what is happening? But like, because we have an incredible outdoor area where people are like connecting and hanging out, the bell really helps to be like, it's time for worship. People head to the inside of the center. Like, I feel like in that sense, like our church and our leadership team is like super intentional in everything. So it's not one person like, I'm going to tell you that worship is valuable. No, like all of us are going to say service time is impactful. It is a high value. We like the Bible says we must gather, like let's gather. And I think because we set that parameter and expectations so high, our people are are loving it, actually. They're like, oh, okay, like church is serious. It is. Like God's word is serious. God's word is truth. God's word is very powerful, and we don't want to miss it.
So like, okay, so if a kid comes 15 minutes after, they're just waiting outside?
No, they're invited to come, but our greeters walk them to their door. So no longer...
Are the parents just kind of walking it up? So they meet them outside.
Yep.
Then.
And then they meet our staff, our volunteers who are able to say, oh, worship has started. So I would love to walk them to the doors to not distract the other children. So even in the language, now we're trying to help them imagine the community that you're part of, right? The thing that kind of Asian culture is good at is what is that person going to think about you? Not that that's, what we want to do, but genuinely, like we're creating a space of worship for other kids. And anytime you come late, it distracts the 200 other children that are in that room. So every time a door would open, our volunteers are distracted. Our staff is distracted because now we have to make sure. And then our kids, like you should see the amount of eyes that just go to a window every time a parent walks by, right? And so for us, it's like, look, when they're here, parents, we want you to be in here, and we allow parents to stay in the room. They can come early, get a guest badge, all that stuff. But when they're there, we want them to start learning what it means to like worship Jesus and worship God. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Seriously, that is great. Clarify your role here for me, because you are the children's pastor, but you oversee children's ministry at all campuses, right?
So they all have like a dotted line to me is what the companies call it. So yeah, I get to, oh my gosh, I genuinely still to this day can't believe this is my job. I get to have a say or an influence to what our other congregations, kids ministries get to do, but vice versa. I get to hear what is happening in all those different campuses. So at Bayside, I was at the second biggest campus. And so in that sense, like I understand what it was to be at the campus level and not always having the access to the things that the main campus had. And so because of that experience, I genuinely value, because what happens in, Irvine is very different than what happens in Oceanside.
For sure.
What happens in a middle school, or, gosh, the amount of years of tear down and set up at the Vine. I want to cry thinking about it. But like, I understand how different it is. And so, in that sense, like we get to have conversations, like what works for you, what doesn't. But at the end of the day, we all agree to have the same Bible content, the same Bible strategies and teaching strategies. And then how that's looked at or implemented differs.
So you are the decision maker for the curriculum.
Yes.
You establish that. And you're pushing that out to the different campuses. Yeah. Obviously, you're training the children's pastors at each campus. So you're very connected to them. So on Sundays, then, you're not preaching every Sunday at Mariners. No. There's another children's pastor there or some other children's teacher there doing that.
Yeah. And we do a lot of our videos and content like during the week that it can be passed out. And even at our main services, there are certain seasons of the series where like Eric will be the only one teaching it and it gets played out to all the congregations. Yeah. And then there are days when the congregation pastor will preach. And so in that way, even that is very strategic of what days, what Sundays and all that happens. And so that part I'm learning, and I'm so thankful in terms of the strategies and the intentionalities behind the leadership team. It's been really incredible to learn. I've only been here 5 months, so like to say I have a huge part of it yet is not quite true.
The structure at Mariners is a little bit different too, because I know there's like an executive team. Are you part of that executive team as well?
I am.
Okay.
I am.
So it's you and Steve. I know Steve is on there, and there's other people on there.
Well, yeah, Steve no longer is there. He was on there, but now
I didn't know
he's
that.
running a whole campus.
Right.
So
I didn't know that.
We have the multiplication pastor on that table now who helps all the congregational pastors.
Okay.
And I love Eric's heart. It's why I said yes to Mariners and to any churches that, I've been praying through. Invite a children's and youth person to that table. I know, like, a lot of the things that they talk about, I would say 70% doesn't apply to me. It really doesn't. They don't need me at that table to make all these decisions. But the fact that they're allowing me to sit there is teaching me how to lead better, even when it comes to my team. And if you think about it, numbers wise, like this weekend, we had 1,200 kids. Like in terms of value, if you truly value that child as the same as an adult, we have more impact than sometimes a congregation. And so like, I love that Eric sees that. I love that our leadership, our board all see that, how important it is. And yeah, I'm learning a lot. So I would tell pastors, like, have an incredible relationship with your children's pastor.
Sure.
Because really, and the statistics shows if you have an incredible kids ministry volunteer number, like anytime volunteer numbers increase in kids ministry, it increases in the entire church. Like it's just crazy how that keeps happening. And so I really believe a strong kids ministry, not just for the kids, like for themselves that it benefits the entire church.
For sure. I have so many stories, I'm sure you too, where through the faith of the child, the parents came to church, believed in Jesus, got baptized. I believe in that. I've experienced that so many times. It's because they saw their kids' life and their faith, and the parent was like, you know what? I got to shape up, or I got to start coming back, or whatever it was. So many stories about that, so many experiences.
Can you imagine the exponential way if a parent was bought in as well as the child? Like imagine the change of that family. So like when we say parents, bring your kid to church, like imagine the exponential impact when that happens.
Yeah. I remember when I went to GSC and I took over as a children's pastor. At the time, I don't know if you remember Timothy Samok's name. He was there and he brought me into the KM service. He said, I want to introduce you. And then you have like 2 minutes to like share something, you know? And I remember when I was there, I told all the parents, I was in English. I was like, I am not a babysitter. I said that to them. I'm not a babysitter. I'm going to teach your children the Bible. They're going to know who Jesus is.
Amen.
And we're going to be here to help raise your children to know Jesus. I remember after I came down, Timothy Song came up to me. He was like, you should have just preached the message. You just kept on preaching. Yeah.
I love that.
I say that so many times. It's not a babysitting ministry.
It's not.
Yeah. These kids, at GSC, my kids knew the Abrahamic covenant, the Davidic covenant, but not just for knowledge, like you said, like they actually knew how that affected their life.
Absolutely. I mean, and kids learn so quickly, like so well. My daughter had to remind me of the actual Christmas story because I got oh my gosh, don't post that. But like the wise men came a few days later. Oh my goodness. It was like a whole thing. My 4-year-old was like, Mom, it's not the same day. I was like, oh, you're right. You're right. It's crazy. And then when you serve in kids ministry, you learn so much Bible.
It's best.
So much Bible because you have to teach it.
Yeah.
You can't teach what you don't really know.
I always tell like pastors, like if you want to learn how to preach well, preach to kids.
Amen.
Preach to kids. Because I could tell right away, I'm like, oh my gosh, if you preach to adults, you're going to lose them so bad. You have to know how to be clear, straight to the point. Preach to kids.
It's so funny on YouTube. I watch a lot of like, you know, those trending pastors and all of them who are trending. Guess what strategy they're using?
Like a children? They focus on children?
No, it's adults. Like the major big like superstar pastors.
They imagine that the kids, is that how they prepare the sermon?
They use object lessons.
Yeah. I'm seeing a lot of that. Steve does that a lot. I see that in his sermons. Steve Bang's doing that a lot. Yeah.
I'm like, oh, look at them all using object lessons.
That. You know, a long time ago, before GSC, I was a children's pastor at CMC, Children's Mission Church. And I remember one of my students, he was like so tired one Sunday.
Yeah.
And I remember like, what's wrong? He's like, I'm just so tired. And I just assumed like, oh, we're playing video games, stuff like that. He's like, no, I'm just like really tired because my week's so busy. And I was like, well, what are you talking about? Well, what's going on in your week? And he was like, on Monday, I got Kumon. Tuesday, I got basketball. Wednesday, I got baseball. Thursday, I got this. And I was like, what on earth? Like, you're like in 3rd grade and you're so packed with all the stuff. And then 30 years later, it's still happening today. This is still happening today. So when you're writing curriculum, when you're overseeing all these campuses, what are you thinking to try to address that, especially in Irvine? Because I'm in Irvine too. The academic pressure is fuck wild.
It is.
It's so much pressure. So How do you address that? What are you trying to do to address that?
I think for me, right now, it's strategy wise, it's small. It's very small changes. So instead of like big things, like what are some things that I believe genuinely has power, right? To change people's lives. Other than Holy Spirit, it's God's word. And so something that we really prayed about as a team strategically, like every child, when they're in our ministry, is going to hear God's word, whether they can read it or not, are going to hear the Bible story, like actually read, and they're going to read and open a Bible. And so in, and not that we're trying to make it like school, like we really have fun things too, but in small group, one of our value was instead of trying to ask all these questions and making sure that like you observed the lesson, and those are incredibly important. And we have that too. But instead of asking like 5 questions, we like cut it down to 2. And the other part of small group is like, I'm going to go back to like old school learning, Korean American church days. We're going to open up the Bible and we're going to research where that actual verse came from. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want kids to know when they're in Kumon, when they're in basketball, when they're in whatever the gazillion things that they have to do and they're impacted by, that God's word is available for them. Talking to God is available for them. And so during the week, like what tools and resources can I give them so that when they're busy, they can start talking to God, every day, not just on the weekend.
Man, that is so good. So good. Again, you have a very awesome experience, curriculum, speaking at conferences as a Korean female. If you were going to kind of do a seminar for Korean churches, or children's ministry, after learning so much from Bayside and Mariners, what are some tips, some guidelines that you would try to teach the Korean church right now?
Yeah. I think number one thing I would say, first of all, you're doing a great job. I think like as Asians, we have a hard time hearing and actually accepting compliments. Like every time you compliment me, I'm complimenting you back.
Yeah, I know, we always do that. It feels weird. It's like, wait.
Oh my God, what's happening? So like I would love in a room of senior pastors and children's leaders, like just take 10 minutes and like whether you cry or not, just feel God's arm around you right now. Like imagine God holding you like in your childlike self and just saying, good job.
So good.
Like freaking good job. Like you're in the game. Like you're in, Brene Brown says you're in the arena. At least you're stinking in the arena. Like way to go. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being in the game. Thank you for doing an incredible job as you are. Like, I think if we genuinely learned how to accept God's love and grace, I truly believe Korean American churches would like exponentially fly.
So good.
Yeah, because it wouldn't be about our behaviors or all the things we have to do. I think the moment we really, because that's like something I struggle with, like the moment I really accept that and that grace, I feel like we're going to just like, because now we know how to do all this stuff, like skills are there. Mm-hmm. And then you get like the genuine power and the confidence of God. Holy moly. Yeah, that's what I would do.
Okay, so you're talking about just focus on encouragement and really trying to encourage them.
Yeah, because I think strategies wise, and it's hard because I feel like I got successful and I'm where I am at today because I sought the strategies and I sought the skills and I saw the practice. But if I really reflect back on the 10 years, like I have these 4 tattoos on my arms. Sorry, 목사님들.
Right. Our culture's like, what? Sorry. Yeah, tats, what's going on?
But it's every time I wanted to quit. And one's in Korean, himang. Yeah, and then Old Testament Hebrew, and then Greek, and then English. And so this is literally like my life in languages.
It's the same word? It's the same word? Okay.
It's different words.
Can you share it? Like, what does it say? Yeah.
So I can't say it in Hebrew. You might be
Dude, I forgot my Hebrew. I know, I'm so bad.
I didn't have to learn that at seminary. I avoided it. But this is be strong and courageous in Hebrew.
Josh, okay, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Himang in Korean, to still have hope. Igero, which is arise in Greek, when Jesus tells every single lame man, arise, like, and then dream is to like not give up on the things that are hopeful for the future. So that's English. And so I feel like every part of me that kind of culturally like has identity issues with, like I'm putting it here and I every time I wanted to quit church.
Wow, that's a cool story though.
It's like on my arm.
Yeah.
So even, you know, even this week when I get exhausted and tired and I feel like I can't do it, like I just look at my arms and be like, okay.
That's awesome.
God, you called me.
Yeah. I can't do that because then I have like 50 tattoos all over my body.
Hannah's like, what is going on?
Hannah, what's another language I could use? What's another language? Let's say female Koreans are watching this right now. And again, I go back to how I really believe Korean church needs to invest more into female Koreans. Yeah. But one thing is they don't all have to be pastors either. If they do, that's great. You know, that's between them and God. I'm not, you know, that's a different story. But they don't all have to be pastors. There's many different roles that you can exercise your gifts. And they don't all have to be teachers and preachers. They think like, oh, I can't preach, I can't serve. That's so not true. Yep. Again, another thing why we have to address this, right? If Korean females are watching this right now, how would you encourage them to seek after their place in the church?
Such a great question and such a great calling. Because there's a lot of us, so many of us. Man, I would say one thing that for me that was really hard, and I think it exists still today, is what everybody thought about me mattered more than anything else in life, right? Like what my parents thought about me, what my significant other thought about me, what the world would think about me mattered deep down way more, I think, than when I thought about me. And so when it comes to the church too, like there's so many things I questioned whether or not I could do. But the cool part is God blessed every time I stepped out in faith. And so, you know, at that time, like even at Good News Chapel, like I didn't know that children's pastor is going to be my like route, right? Like no idea. I just knew I liked kids. I love those kids. They still Instagram message me, you know? Man, like I love those kids. And I went up the ages with them. I think it was like first grade to second grade to third grade. Yeah. Like those specific girl groups, I stayed with them. And I invested into them. And I did not know this was going to be my life, but whatever it is, like whether it's food and cooking or whether it's like putting on makeup for people, like you could be the stylist to your pastors. Do you know how many pastors would hate going shopping for the things that they have to put on for the, like, you know what I mean? Like you can be a stylist, you can be a researcher, you can be their event planner. Like, I think that's the hard thing too, is at the church, we think there's like very limited roles. One thing that's been successful in my life is I would probably, like if you gave me one role as a volunteer, I would cut that into 3 different people's role. And in that way, you give room for more people to practice their gifting. And so when you say like, oh, hospitality team, like one person can't imagine all of the things. So I would be like drink person and snack person and dessert person. And you will see like the most incredible now full on menu. So I would say like just whatever it is that you love doing, like start it, like invest into it. I hear all the time leaders, like even when they're coming onto staff, they're like, I don't want to step on anyone's toes. You know what? Most leaders, like they're not stepping on toes. There's no toes to be stepped on. There's a hole. Like we need you to step in.
Nice. Yeah.
So that's what I've been telling my staff is like, there's no holes. Just step in, because at this point right now, whatever your gifting is, like God's going to use it. He wants you to use it to bless the local church. Especially after the pandemic, when there's like so many holes and movement and transitions happening. And I think all those are good and hard things that God is doing. The church as a whole, like if you're a member, step in. Yeah. That's what I would tell the female women. I
don't get an opportunity to ask this a lot because I don't know a lot of females in your position. Yeah. But as a wife, how do you balance your ministry with your marriage to Steve? How do you do that?
Oh my gosh. Once again, I wish I can say I was awesome at this. It takes time. I think first thing is you have to know it takes a long time and it's hard work to evaluate what you want and who you are. Like it has been a year. It's our 14th anniversary now.
Nice.
Oh my gosh, we survived. And to say that like I genuinely say we survived, because to think like our marriage was perfect, I probably packed up my belongings like gazillion times. I won't say the exact number because people might get shocked. So how do I do it? I think it's the same thing as before, is like anytime I wanted to give up, I remember the day Jesus saved me. I can still remember like Camp Cedar Crest. Do you remember Camp Cedar Crest?
I do. I do. For sure. For sure I do.
Oh my gosh. I remember Camp Cedar Crest. I still can smell the outdoor like pine cones and the pillar. I remember that moment when Jesus saved me and told me I was his and that my life would now like belong to him and I'm safe from anything that I do. So I would say, to answer that, how to be an incredible wife, how to be an incredible mom, I like go to that moment and I just literally every morning I like cry out to Jesus, like, you saved me. You have to give me the strength to take the next step. So when my kids are crazy and you know, my husband and I are in this unhealthy place in our life, like it really is genuinely the grace of God. And I would say that came from the Korean church, that getting on your knees in the morning and yelling, Jesus, like that came from the Korean American church for me. And so I pride myself in that. Like I will scream Jesus and pray with all of my heart because I have to every day to survive. It's the only way I know how. Like God saved my marriage. God saved my kids. God gave me my kids. Like, especially this recent transition was really like the hardest for me. It really was one of the hardest experiences for me.
Why was it so hard?
Just a lot of internal, I think, mental struggles. And I know I shared it with you a little before, like I really had to evaluate my identity in God, like depths. I think I've always done it a lot of times in surface level, but in depths of it. My fourth tattoo also came. But I don't know how, like God is so good because my family transitioned so well. Like, because God knew if they weren't doing well, I'd be like, bounce.
Right,
yeah.
Right.
So yeah, I wish I could say I hate and am so grateful that it's this answer that like, I did that Yesu님, Jesus prayer every morning.
Well, I mean, that prayer is so important because it allows you just to spend time with God.
Yeah.
And when you spend time with God, people forget, like, you know, God's going to speak to you. I don't know how, but, you know, there's this communication.
Yeah.
And whether it's through emotional comfort, maybe it was some sort of like sign. Okay. It's different for everybody. Right. But yeah, spend time with God, and not immediately. Sometimes it might take weeks, but you're going to find a way. You're going to find a way. That's why trust is so hard. Mm-hmm. People think trust means like, you know, the answer. Like, no, trust means you don't know. That's why you're trusting, but that's why it's so hard.
It's so hard.
Yeah.
It's so hard.
You moved down here. You have 3 kids. How old are they now?
11. She's in junior high, which freaks me out.
Wow.
11, 9, and then 4.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I have 9, 6, and 3.
Ooh, hard times.
So, wow. Okay. And then they're all girls?
They're all girls.
All girls.
I know Steve's prayer is 1.
Oh, so he didn't want a boy.
He does not want any boys.
Whoa, this is interesting. Why?
He came from a traumatic, I think, like experience family.
Okay.
He like wanted the line to end with him.
He's the last of the Jins.
Yeah, he like wanted it to end, and he got his prayer. I was like, I don't want it to end because you're so incredible, honey. But like, he's like, no, it just needs to end.
Did you want a boy or did you not care?
Oh my God, the last one. This is like horrible to say, but I couldn't go to work that day.
Because you find out you're a girl.
Like emotionally, I was like, oh, Jesus. I had a name. I still have a name. So who knows? But Steve would say absolutely not. But
all right.
Yeah.
So you guys are here. You got all 3 kids. Your husband's working at Concordia now, right?
He
Director of admission enrollment. Okay.
He gets to run the whole division. He loves it. Yeah. Oh, I will tell single Korean American or Asian ladies one advice if you're looking for a husband.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, they're all listening now. Yes, they're all listening now.
At least not that like our life is ever perfect. I mean, trust me, there are many times like he and I both wanted to leave each other. Because marriage brings out truly the ugliest and the most rawest forms of you. But I remember when I was dating at that restaurant, like I was like, no, I ain't marrying him. Like he just wasn't my like type, quote unquote. And then I went and read the Bible. See what happens when you read the Bible?
Yes.
I went back that night, read the Bible, and it said David was short in stature, but had a heart after God. And so like, I remember God speaking to me, do you like specifically, do you want all these things that a man could provide for you, which is like a huge thing in Asian American culture. It's like, you want a man to provide all these things for you. Or do you want a man of character? And like, I had like, once again, that moment with God, like, do you want a man of character who loves me more than you? And I was like humbling because I was like, maybe he could love me as much as he loves you. But I remember I made that decision that day is like, no, I'm going to marry a man who loves God like way more than he loves me. And so when you ask, how do you make your marriage work? Like he keeps our family together. Like he loves God so much and he fears God so much. He keeps our family together. And same thing, I love God and I fear God so much that like, man, if I were to hurt God's son in the future in a way I already have, but like, you know, in that way to break up our family, I don't know. Yeah. So I would say all the single ladies, look for guys who really, really love God.
Yes. Amen to that. Oh my goodness.
And know Jesus really well.
Yes. Not just go to church, but they love God. You see it. It's visible. Love is not invisible. You gotta see it. You gotta see it. Man, Steve, you're so lucky, man. You have an awesome wife here. All right. I don't know if Steve's listening.
I'm very blessed.
One of these days soon, okay? I don't know when, because I know you're super busy and you're famous, you're speaking everywhere, all right? But one of these days here in SoCal, we gotta do a children's conference here in SoCal.
It's so funny. Like all the people who used to do it here, it's just getting harder and harder.
Let's do it. I would love to bring something here. We'll talk about it more. I would love to do a children's conference down here. It would be awesome.